Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a really fascinating, highly specific journaling method called the non-dominant hand technique. We're pulling this straight from Thomas Lathea's work, 12 Steps to a Good Life, and it is absolutely brilliant for healing your inner child by totally bypassing those stubborn adult defenses we all build up. So, let's dive right in.
Are you carrying someone else's rules? Man, it is such a profound question. Because, so often in our everyday lives, we deal with this heavy emotional weight, anxiety, fear of failure, you name it, and we mistakenly think, wow, I must be fundamentally broken. But the truth we're looking at today, you aren't broken at all, not even a little bit. You're honestly probably just exhausted from carrying the weight of inherited expectations. We constantly gauge our success as adults against this rigid set of standards that, when you really think about it, we didn't even create in the first place.
Think about the exact nature of those inherited standards. When we were kids, we were basically blank slates, right? Just completely absorbing all these rules from our parents, caretakers, and society just by watching. We were explicitly told, hey, be smart and be good. But then, almost in the same breath, we were warned, don't be too big for your britches, or children should be seen and not heard. It's wild. Our entire path to getting acceptance and love relied on navigating these completely arbitrary, totally conflicting rules. And if you didn't live up to them, well, it caused deep, deep anxiety. So what did you do? You faked it. You literally just put on a mask to survive.
And these early, completely contradictory rules actually distort our worldview and leave us with all these unmet emotional needs. When you're a child and you're trying to smash completely inconsistent messages together into some kind of coherent reality, it creates a major rift. It essentially forces you to wear these protective masks that twist up your basic human needs. Like your very simple, natural needs for safety, love, and belonging, they became totally distorted through that confusing childhood lens. Now, those early survival tactics, those masks, sure, they might have helped you get through your youth, but as an adult, they leave you operating from a fractured, really confused center.
Which actually builds into this fascinating psychological model: you are not a single personality. Seriously, you are made up of different sub-personalities, or parts. We always tend to think of ourselves as the single, unified monolith, but modern psychology and the models we're looking at suggest something totally different. You have an adult self, maybe a critical parent voice that you've internalized, and all these different protective parts. And get this, they all have their own desires, their own fears, and their own agendas. It's kind of like a bus full of passengers who all want to go to the same destination, but they are constantly arguing over who gets to hold the steering wheel. Now, among all those different parts on that bus, there is one that is just absolutely vital. The source material actually defines the inner child as a portal to the soul that never grows up, remaining highly sensitive and trusting. And I think that really sets the emotional stakes for us today. Your inner child is literally the part of you that holds on to your earliest vulnerabilities. It's the innocent, beautiful core of exactly who you were before the masks and all those contradictory rules were forced on you. It's what keeps you human. But because it's so incredibly sensitive, it's also the part that carries your deepest, earliest wounds. And when those early wounds are just ignored, the inner child holds on to all these unresolved emotions. We're talking shame, fear, anxiety, and a really desperate, unmet need for validation. The thing is, when we don't address these unprocessed emotions, they don't just magically disappear because you get older. No way. Instead, they manifest as chronic adult dysfunction. They literally become the root of our adult anger, our obsessive need for control, our chronic indecision, and our intense fear of rejection. Bottom line, if your inner child is hurting, your adult life is going to be incredibly difficult to navigate. So, the big question: how do we actually fix this? Well, to heal, we have to intentionally reparent ourselves. True emotional health requires us to consciously step up as the logical, loving adults we are right now and provide the love, the safety, and the validation that our inner child originally lacked. We literally have to validate the emotions from our own childhood experiences. But that brings up a really tricky problem. How do you actually communicate with a part of your subconscious that has been locked away behind decades of rock-solid adult defenses?
Well, that brings us to this highly specific, very practical journaling method. I want you to think for a second about the stark contrast between your hands. Your dominant hand, the one you use to write with every single day, is deeply wired to your logical, critical, heavily guarded adult self, right? It knows all the rules, the grammar, the expectations. But your non-dominant hand, that awkward one you almost never write with, it naturally bypasses all those adult filters. It is directly linked to your deeply feeling, totally vulnerable, emotional inner child. By simply switching hands, you are literally changing the neural pathways you're using to express yourself.
The psychological why behind this is just fascinating. As Thomas Alethea points out, using your non-dominant hand can bypass your critical faculties and put you more in touch with your inner child. See, your dominant hand writes what you think you should say. Your adult ego is completely controlling the pen. But because writing with your non-dominant hand requires so much unusual focus and honestly feels so unpolished, your critical adult brain kind of just steps out of the way. It breaks right through those walls and taps directly into those deep, vulnerable, unprocessed emotions that have just been hiding in the shadows.
Okay, so let's get into the actual mechanics of how you execute this. Step 1. Set your intention. You want to find a quiet space, relax, and focus inwardly with a really sincere desire to connect with that younger version of yourself. Step 2. Take your pen in your dominant hand, the one you normally use, and write out a question to your inner child. Something simple, like how are you feeling today, or what are you afraid of? And then, Step 3. This is where the magic happens. Force yourself to switch the pen to your non-dominant hand and let your inner child write the reply.
Now, as you try this, you absolutely have to remember the golden rule. Ignore spelling, ignore grammar, throw perfection out the window and focus purely on raw emotional truth. When you write with your wrong hand, it is going to look messy. It's going to literally look like a child's handwriting, and that is exactly the point. Seriously, let me reassure you, this is not an art or a writing test. Just accept the imperfections. This is simply a safe space to integrate your childlike vulnerability with your adult mind. Just let whatever thoughts come up flow out onto the paper. Zero self-judgment, zero editing.
So why go through this clumsy, sometimes really emotional exercise? Because the psychological benefits are profound. This technique uncovers the hidden roots of your pain. It finally allows you to hear what that neglected part of you has been trying to say for decades, which is what actually heals old wounds. And ultimately, it builds immense self-compassion. I mean, when you see your own pain written out in the shaky, vulnerable handwriting of a child, it is pretty much impossible not to feel empathy for yourself. It ties directly back to our broader goal here, living a good, balanced, and deeply authentic life.
Which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought. If you grabbed a piece of paper right now and asked your inner child what they desperately need today, what would your other hand write back to you? The answer is already inside of you, just waiting for permission to speak. So I challenge you. Take a few minutes today, grab a pen, switch hands, and find out. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly, highly encourage you to put this powerful technique into practice.